Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Brown Car Guy and Buddies, and today I'm going to be talking to Jonny Lieberman. Yes, he of MotorTrend fame. You've probably caught him on YouTube in videos such as MotorTrend Ignition, MotorTrend Head to Head. I think he's done Best Driver's Car, Best Drag Race, etc, etc. He's been at MotorTrend for about a decade now, and I think he was also at Autoblog and Jalopnik. I've known him for quite a few years actually, although we haven't spent a lot of time together, but through the internet we've got to know each other quite well. So I'll be talking to him about his career, how he's got to what he's doing, some of the stories, some of the highlights of the cars he's testing at the moment, but also I think I've got to touch on a little bit of politics with him, which is not something I normally do, but I know that he's quite a passionate and knowledgeable person in that arena. So this is going to be really interesting. Let's get into this. Before we do that, make sure that you are subscribing to this channel, youtube.com/brown car guy. Make sure you hit that notification bell icon so that you don't miss any videos that I upload. Follow me on social media as well. Just search for hashtag Brown Car Guy. That's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And whilst you're at it, also subscribe to browncarguy.com. Cool. Let's get into this. Hey Jonny, how you doing? Nice to finally get hold of you. This is fantastic.
I know. Salam alaikum. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm fine. You said salam alaikum, wa alaikum salam. I was almost going to say I'm disappointing you didn't do the hi there.
Oh,
but you
hi
said,
there.
Oh, you've done that. See, now we know it's you.
Okay, fair enough.
But good of you to greet me with the traditional salam alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Well done. So how's it been for you? How's lockdown been?
You know, first of all, I miss traveling, but and restaurants. But aside from that, I mean, it's been good. What I did was I said, okay, I'm stuck at home, but I can drive, and I live 8 miles from one of the greatest roads in the world, Angeles Crest Highway, here in Los Angeles. So I'm just going to book as many supercars as they'll give me. And that's what I've been doing. So my weekly thing is I get a new sports car, supercar, and I blast up Angeles Crest, and it's only 2 hours a week, but it's wonderful.
Not a bad way to spend lockdown, really, is it?
It's great, yeah.
And I bet the roads have been quiet as well.
It depends, So sadly, everyone's going stir crazies, and there's a lot of good hiking up there. So apparently, if you hike, you drive a Prius or a Subaru. So the road can be very heavily trafficked because it's most of the ways it's a 55-mile-an-hour road, and the Priuses all go 35 miles an hour. So you gotta pick your battles. But I usually try and get up there on the road before 7 a.m. and if you do that, no one's getting up that early to go hiking. So and I can be done by 9. So
it's interesting because Priuses here are all driven by Uber drivers. So over there they have a different. Oh right, okay, right.
I don't know if it's still true, but for many years, the number one selling car in California was the Prius. So it might be it might be the Tesla Model 3 now, but everyone just loved the Prius. So they're everywhere. Sadly, they're very slow typically. And so are Subarus, turns out. Except for the guys in the STIs, they're very quick.
Yeah. But those are few and far between, I should imagine, isn't it? Yeah.
Weirdly, I think Southern California is one of the biggest STI markets in the world because there's a lot of them up on Angeles Crest.
So there's talk of a new one coming out, but we'll get to that. Before we get to all of that, I want to recap a little bit about the famous, legendary Jonny Lieberman. How did you get to where you are now?
Oh gosh.
10 years you've been doing this, right? Or has it been longer than that?
10 years at MotorTrend.
Right.
I've been doing the car.
I mean, you posted a picture the other day where you didn't have a beard, and I was completely confused. I was like, but surely you were born with a beard, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I've been at it for a while. I mean, this is my new saying when people ask me this. If someone says to you, how do you get really strong? The answer is, well, you work out 3 or 4 times a week for 10 years. So how did I get here? Is I've been working really hard for a long time. But real quickly, I've always loved cars. I've always loved to write. I knew I was a pretty good writer and a pretty good storyteller, which I think that's an angle a lot of people miss out on when they want to get into the car business.
Yeah.
If you can't tell a story And you know, if you can't tell a story, if you're talking
Yeah.
to people and they stop listening, then you know you're not good at telling stories. So yeah, I was kind of full of it, and I knew how to put it on paper.
So
It,
did you come from so I mean, you know, when you I mean, I absolutely totally am with you with the
yeah.
storytelling thing. But would you say you came at it from a literary journalistic point of view, or purely from a car passionate point of view? Or is it a
Both.
happy convergence of both?
Both. You know, I tell this a lot too. So in college, one of the things I studied was comparative religion, and then
Mm.
people ask me a lot. They go, "I want your job. What do I study when I go to school?" You know, and I always say comparative religion, because if you think about it, you know, Ford versus Chevy,
All right.
Mercedes versus BMW. What's better than, like, you know, Islam versus Judaism versus
Yeah.
Catholicism versus Protestantism? Like, it's the same thing. You're just
Yeah.
coming at it from different angles.
Yeah.
And to understand Ford versus Chevy, right?
Yeah.
They both make V8 rear wheel drive Camaro Mustang. You know, it helps to, I don't know, to study other things. But I think I could bring things to the table that writing wise, because I studied a lot and I had a lot of other life experiences
Uh-huh.
before I professionally got into cars. I think I was a little bit of a different voice. And I also, you know, I started at Jalopnik when Jalopnik started, or
Right,
a
right, yes.
couple months after it started,
Mm.
and we were just very different. It was just
Mm.
it was just something new.
It
And
was, it was. I remember the early days of Jalopnik. It was a very different take on things. It was a very different route
yeah,
to stuff. I compare it to something like in the publishing world. There was a magazine. What was the name of that magazine? It was a UK magazine. It was completely different from everything else. It was very arty. You know, it was completely like that. But you guys, you took a completely different slant, a different way of viewing stuff, didn't you?
yeah. Well, I mean, part of it was, and here's the other thing. It was unplanned. It was just, you got the right tools in the toolbox together. So we never had a planning meeting. We never said, here's what we're gonna do. But previously to that, in the U.S. at least, if you were gonna be a car writer, you know, you had to. Carroll Shelby was the coolest, and Steve McQueen was the coolest, and you just had these like boxes you
Yeah.
had to tick, and like the coolest car possible is a 427 Chevy, and if it's not that, then it's a 67 Corvette with a 427, and that's dogma, and that's it. And then we were like, actually, a Citroen DS21 Palais, that's actually cooler than a Cobra. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Hate to break it to you. And I think for a lot of people, they felt that they could finally, like, come out of the closet, for lack of a better term, but like express themselves. Like, yes, I'm into cars. I'm not necessarily into Cobras. I'm really into, whatever other obscure thing we were into. And I think it showed people that you could professionally be into something that wasn't the dogma, that wasn't the canonized orthodox way to be a car person. And so
I think that's
that
really interesting. I mean, is that something that, I mean, I actually do relate to what you're saying there, but that's a way to bring a different audience, isn't it? That's a way to actually expand an audience and to bring more people into what it's trying to do. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, then you're not really developing your audience, are you? You're not building it and you're not evolving it.
Absolutely. And a lot of us, like, speaking for myself, Mike Bumbeck, who was there in the beginning, and Davey Johnson, who sadly passed away last year. But we would all go to like a drag race, and it was great. We loved drag racing, but at the end of the day, I'll never forget this. Like, I went to a drag race, and somebody had a Volkswagen Bug drag racer, right? And I remember this guy, and Volkswagens have been in America since 1948 or whatever, the first one showed up. And this guy, like, we were talking to him in the pits, and he turned and he looked at it, he's like, import. And it's like, like that car's been in the country longer than you have,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and what happens is, like I love lowriders, right? And there used to be a time when everybody was into cars was into lowriders, but it bifurcated, and sadly kind of along racial lines. But like, you would have guys that were into drag racing and hot rods who would never look at a lowrider, but like lowriders are art. They're super cool, just like a hot rod is super cool.
Yeah.
And so I would love, I just want everyone to appreciate all types of cars.
I totally agree with you. I'm totally with you on that one. I think in the UK, you're probably familiar with this, but there's obviously certain biases here as well. For example, when I was growing up reading about Japanese cars, the writers here would always look down on Japanese cars. It's like, oh yes, good effort, but, you know, one day they'll make good cars, you know. It's like, what are you talking about? You know, it's the Toyota. Have you heard of the Toyota Corolla? You know, and then, but having the experience, for example, in the Middle East where I was based, and there, because it's such a melting pot of different people from different cultures, different countries, and as you may be familiar, we kickstarted the meat culture in Dubai, and we used to have events where, you know, you would have, you know, an Emirati turning up in a Rolls Royce, and a Filipino turning up in a souped up Honda Civic, you know, parking side by side and chatting, you know, and that would be the wonderful thing, because, you know, you could just bring everybody together and everybody could appreciate what the other people were doing. Of course, you had the Mustang Camaro rivalries and all of this stuff, but overall, it was just about car culture.
Yeah, and you know, I think what's nice nowadays, because what's really gotten popular, well, I mean, most websites now cover everything. But also, like, if you look at, I don't want to say grassroots, but if you look at like what's really popular here is cars and coffee, right? So, you know, you get up Sunday morning, you roll in by 6 a.m., it's done by 8 a.m., and everything shows up, you know, everything. And I remember at the original Cars and Coffee, which was down in Irvine at the old Premier Automotive Group. Remember when Ford owned Volvo and Aston Martin and everything? So that parking lot, this guy John started it, the first Cars and Coffee, but it was great because there would be a Ferrari, like, you know, 250 short wheelbase and an Isuzu V-Across. Yeah. And like, all the Nissan GTR guys would park next to each other, but then they'd be across from the dude in the 57 Roadmaster. Yeah. And so it was just an eclectic car show. Now, sadly, what happened was when they got kicked out of that location, the people that took it over, and that one's dead, the original, as far as I can tell. But they came up with a list, and if your car wasn't on this list, and I'll give you for instance, I went the very first one they did when they lost that site and they moved to the Orange County Fairgrounds. I had the very first. It was a Mercedes. It was an AMG GLE 63 S Coupe, the very first one in the country. And I pulled up, and they said, "Nope, only two-door Mercedes are allowed." Right. And I'm like, "What if I had a Hammer wagon? Like, I couldn't bring this, you know?" And he's like, "No." And then before he sold it, Jerry Weigert showed up in his like aquamarine teal Vector WX3, and they wouldn't let him in. So
no way. Are you kidding me?
Wasn't on the list.
How rare are those? I mean, come on.
There's two. My friend Chris owns both of them, but you know, there's two. And
were they sold recently, weren't they? Were they sold, or they were up for sale?
He bought them 18 months ago, something like that.
All right. Oh, so your friend
almost done.
All right. Okay.
Got it. So anyway, so I'm sitting in the parking lot, and it's like, you know, here I have this crazy AMG. There's the Vector. There was a Saab Sonnet 3, and the parking lot was 100 times cooler because all the Cars and Coffee was like Mustangs, like 64 Mustangs, which one is fine. That's all you need. You know, Cobras and just the usual stuff, you know, that we've all seen a million times. But the overflow lot was like the show. That's where everyone was hanging out, you know.
And I don't know if you were able to follow the escapades of Imtishan and myself in Dubai with Motoring Middle East, but we like I said, we kickstarted the meets and we grew them to a stage where we had the biggest meet in Dubai ever. That was about 5-6 years ago. We basically jammed up Festival City and we caused a traffic jam and the police were there and everything. Fortunately, the police in Dubai are all car guys, so thank God, they helped us instead of hauling our asses away. But we were adamant because as they got bigger, we also faced the same dilemma. We were like, how do we control it? How do we corral it? But we were adamant that everybody should be allowed in, no matter who they were, no matter what car. If they believed their car was cool, they deserve to be there. It's as simple as that, you know. But go ahead. Go on.
I was just going to say, so you know, another really cool car show that's been happening in the U.S. is Hot Wheels of all.
Oh wow, I love Hot Wheels.
Yeah, so they've been doing these things. I can't remember what they're called, but they basically every year they'll take one real car and turn it into a Hot Wheel, and they do 20 or 25 shows a year, and like every other week they'll go to a different Walmart parking lot somewhere. And everybody brings their cars, and then they have a bunch of judges. So I got to do it at the Hot Wheels headquarters, which is like a mile from the MotorTrend headquarters in El Segundo down by LAX, the airport. But I judged it with like, you know, it was like Jay Leno and, you know, Adam Carolla was there and Dave Merrick, you know, the head designer of Acura. I'm just trying to think who else was there, but you know, pretty big names. It was cool. And the cars, like we picked a Nash. Somebody made this killer Nash rat rod, but like there was a Toyota Cressida that they, you know, they'd done totally JDM style. There was a Lamborghini LM002. So it's so eclectic, and so the young
and
kids.
the thing is, you see stuff that you wouldn't have made. Like one of the things that turned up at some of our meets were these Japanese cars that were sticker bombed. Have you ever seen that? With like one fender will just be sticker bombed. I was like, wow, I've never seen that before. It's absolutely amazing. But we moved straight into cars. Go on. Finish your thought.
The great part though is that the young people, they go to a car show and they see absolutely everything, monster trucks to Paganis, right? And so they're not being taught that only these cars are cool. Like everything's cool.
Exactly. So that's a very good point.
Important. Yeah,
it's a great equalizer. It's a great equalizer of people, and that's something we'll come back to in a little bit. But we've jumped ahead a little bit. We've jumped away from the conversation. By the way, you said you're near Hot Wheels. When you go down to Hot Wheels next, I think I'm missing one of the colors of Lotus Esprit. So
well, you know,
maybe sadly, you can pick that up for me.
So it's interesting. I got a really nice tour of the headquarters there. It's like Mattel's West Coast headquarters. But that's where they design everything. But they're manufactured in 8 different factories.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough.
And it's one of those things where they send the plans to like whoever can do it cheapest that week.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like Malaysia or wherever.
Okay, you've talked yourself out of that one. Okay, but pulling you back into your career, because again, a lot of people, you know, they follow me and they follow you, and I'm sure you get asked this a lot. It's like, how do I get to do what you do? So, what would be your advice to people that are looking like? I mean, one thing you've made clear, like, you know, I learned this a long time, is that. In fact, an editor told me this right at the beginning of my career. He said, if you want to do this, journalism, he wasn't talking about automotive journalism, he was talking about journalism in general. He said, don't study journalism. Study something else. Journalism, you learn from doing it.
Right. Yeah. And again, like, I don't even like the term journalism for what I do. I mean, you know, cargo fast, fun, you know, I'm not like investigating the president or whatever, you know, so I'm not really a journalist. I think of myself as a car writer or a storyteller. So yeah, there's that. Be prepared to start small. A lot of people, they're like, I want to be the senior features editor at MotorTrend. And it's like, what have you published? Nothing. It's like, well, you know, and by the way, the nicest thing about starting small is when you make a horrible mistake, no one really sees it.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I remember the first year I was writing, you know, I just wrote this horrible thing. I don't even know why I published it. I don't know how to talk about it, but like, I know about 20 people saw it. So that's off my back, you know, it was just something really stupid. But
the thing is, look, you know, the way I see it, in your life, there will be a number of mistakes that you are basically allotted. It's better to get those out of the way early on, right?
Yeah. And then the other one, and again, young guys, it's not that they don't want to hear this, they just don't understand it. And young girls too. You're gonna have to work really, really hard. So what I tell people is, before they asked me to work for MotorTrend, I spent 5 years where I would wake up at around 6 a.m. and I would work till about 9 or so, take a shower, drive to work, do my other job, with plenty of, like, you know, working on car stuff from my other job, get home, do whatever I had to do, and then stay up till 2 in the morning writing about cars. And I did that for years, you know, years and years and years and years. And that actually got me to Autoblog, which was you know, that's how my name I think really got widely spread, because Autoblog used to be like the biggest. It was just it was, when I was there, it was an incredible machine. Like, we just had, you know, 12 writers that wrote 10 stories a day. I mean, it was just no one could compete. It's changed, but so you know, but there was a lot of just hard work, you know. And I remember we would, and again, without talking about it, but I remember the culture of Autoblog. We would go to the Frankfurt Motor Show, and it would be like, well, how many stories did you publish today? It's like, I did 12 in a day. It's like, oh, well, I did 13. It's like, oh, and we had this, and no one ever said, we didn't get more money. Well, actually we did, because we were paid by the post, but it was so little, it didn't make a difference. I mean, honestly, I think we were getting like $25 a post or something, just pathetic. And we were flying coach, by
Yeah.
the way, flying coach to Geneva from LA. And we would stay at a hotel that was 2 hours away from the convention center for Geneva, let's say.
Yeah. I know.
And
Yeah.
we would take, because it's like
I'd say
$800.
last time I went there was quite a few years ago. We stayed across the border because it's easier, it's cheaper, and then you just drive across.
We stayed, I don't even know where it was, but 2 hours away. We had to get up at 4 a.m. to get the 4:30 train to be there by 6:30 because they opened the doors at 7.
Yeah.
But it was just madness, madness.
Do you think that because of the advent of social media and because we're all on social media and we all post up the good stuff, that people are getting the wrong impression of what we actually do? Because I keep telling people, I said, look, 90% of my time is just staring at that screen trying to figure out what to do next. That's what I do.
I mean, look, at this stage in my career, I could pull up the email and show. Let's see here. At 9:37 p.m. last night, I filed a story. Because I was working on it till 9:37, and that was a Tuesday night. So I don't live this. I mean, when we're flying around now, we're not going anywhere. But when you're flying around on jets going to exotic locations, it is really cool. I miss that part of it. But you got to do the work. You got to do the work. So
that's the main thing. So talking of traveling, obviously you've done a lot of traveling. I was looking through the blurb that you sent me, and I've got to ask you about this one: plunging a Unimog into a frozen lake.
That was fun.
First of all, how does that happen? And secondly, how do you survive to tell the tale? That's extraordinary.
Well, we let's see. That, I mean, I made it sound maybe better than it was, but I did a video about a Unimog U400, which is the current small Unimog. They make the U500, which is like the semi-truck size one. Which I said, well, what do you need that for? And they go, well, if you got to move like pipes around Mongolia, that's how you do it. But so we did a video. Unimog, Mercedes has a Unimog test track, and it's an old quarry, and they have some water features. And we were there in February, and it was freezing. And so this little pond, which is not little, I mean, it's probably 3 or 4 feet, a meter deep, a little bit more than that, maybe deep, was frozen. And so the guy, when he was driving, showing me the course, he goes up and he crashes through a sheet of ice, and then and now it's your turn. So we did the same thing, and I mean, Unimogs can kind of do anything, but that was super.
But But you said it was 3 or 4 meters deep.
I would say it was 3 feet. It's about a meter.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. All right.
Maybe like 1.3 meters deep. Okay. It was. If you were standing in it, the water would come up to here.
Wow.
But the Unimog is
already up to there. Yeah, exactly.
It's 10 feet tall, 3 meters tall. So,
but you do seem to find yourself in cold places a lot, don't you? Because the other thing you mentioned, the volcano in Iceland with a Subaru, and ending up in Red Square in a Land Rover Discovery.
It's funny. Out of all those, Red Square was the coldest. In fact, Here's how stupid I was. So, I was going to Russia. And I'm going. It was the end of March. I remember it was around March 30th. I think we landed, something like that. And I said, "Well, that's spring." And I said, "Well, I don't need to bring
you didn't. Oh
no, I had a coat. They gave me. I was with Land Rover. They gave me a coat, and it was cool because they were so rushed. It didn't say Land Rover on it. It was Arc'teryx, which is really expensive black, nice winter coat. But I just brought Converse. I didn't bring any real shoes. So stupid. But the first thing we did was we drove from Moscow to there was a city called Chern, which is not famous, but it's where Tchaikovsky's from, I believe. No, sorry, Chekhov is from there. But then we went a little bit.
Chekhov from Star Trek, obviously.
No, the other Chekhov, this guy. Anyway, long story short, we went to a Soviet car graveyard. So it was all this crazy guy, and I met him. He's crazy. He had about 200 Soviet cars sitting in a field. In late March, there was 2 feet of snow. Wow. And so I'm trying to shoot this video, and I'm running around in Converse in snow, and it's freezing. And I my feet are like getting frostbite. It was horrible. and it was, I've never been colder than Russia. Well, one time in Sweden, but Russia was just so cold, such a cold place.
So when you get a chance to go traveling again, are you looking forward to the cold places or somewhere a bit warmer?
I love. I mean, I absolutely love. Like one of my most favorite trips I ever did was me and Justin Bell, Derek Bell's kid. We drove a Mercedes G65 from Copenhagen to the Arctic Circle in Sweden.
Wow!
And that was in February. That was that same Unimog time period, and that was one of my favorite things. It's just you know, I grew up in L.A. and you know, it's just. For me, it's very exotic. Like when I went to Dubai, it's like, oh, a desert. This is like Las Vegas. You know, I grew up with this. But like, you know, the Arctic Circle, you know, Jokkmokk, Sweden, that's exotic. That's like, that's another world. And Iceland, I love it. You know, so I'd love to get back to all that.
Oh my God, rather you than me. I don't even like the cold, honestly. I don't know. That's why I was in the Middle East so long, then I had to come back to the UK. But today, having said that, today is really warm. We're having a really hot day today. So let's go back to the car.
It'll start raining in minutes, don't worry.
It could happen like that, honestly. So if you go out without an umbrella, it'll rain. You know that.
Of course.
So let's go back to what you've been up to now. And you said you've been driving some supercars around. What have you been pedaling around, and what's really sort of impressed you?
I drove the Porsche Speedster, and that I think has been my favorite quarantine car. I'd driven it previously, but only, well, okay, Porsche, they're pretty savvy. So all the journalists always say, oh, I wish I could drive your museum cars. So they brought a bunch of museum cars out to California.
Wow.
Including a 917, a 959, which I got to drive. But you've got a 914, right? Yeah, I have a 914. I mean, I don't have it. It's sitting in a shop getting fixed, but one day I'll have a 914. But anyway, so this day I was driving the Speedster. They had this car there, which I saw it on paper and I thought nothing of it, but it was 1953 Porsche 356 America Roadster.
Wow.
I thought nothing of it, and then I got there and I started talking to the guy from the museum. He goes, "Yeah, well, there were 17 built. This is the 17th. You know, the factory power was 40 horsepower on the regular cars. This was 70.
Wow.
It weighed 600 kilos, 620 kilos, something insane like that. And it had didn't have turn signals. Well, it had aftermarket turn signals. Porsche put that in later, but it had a key and headlights. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
No ventilation, nothing. And it was the most pure car I've ever driven. It was just so I yes, I was driving the Speedster around, but it just kind of felt like any other 911. So fast forward 6 months. I was back in December. So 3 weeks ago, and I got the Speedster, and like it's as good as cars get. I'm just shocked by the bandwidth of that car because it's a GT3 engine. It's got the GT3 suspension, although not, it's not set up for track, but it's just perfect. And it's also a convertible. And usually if you're in like a hot Porsche and you get stuck behind a slow car, you get upset. You want to get around them. In this one, you look around, that canyon's beautiful. The sun is beautiful. Like, it's just a dream car.
Are you a Porsche file? Are you into Porsches? Obviously you own one, so.
Well, the story of that is Davey Johnson, who I was talking about. He died, and I was pretty close friends with him, and his family. They were cleaning his house out, and they got in touch with me, and they said, "Hey, he's got a bunch of cars and motorcycles, cars. Can you help us sell them?" And I said, "Does he still have that green Porsche?" And they said, "Yeah, but it's really bad." And I go, "Oh, yeah, well, I'll take it." And it was much worse than they said.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's been sitting in a shop, my friend Jack's shop, Scientific Porsche in Pasadena here, and it just got painted, but it needs a lot of work.
Oh, we're looking forward to learn more about that through social media. But the thing about Porsches, I mean, there's a real following, there's a real affinity for Porsches in America. To some extent, I think even more so than Europe.
Yeah, I'm not a Porsche file. Like, I believe other cars exist.
Yeah.
I believe other cars.
It's a bit of a car journalist cliche as well, isn't it? It's like, if you...
I fought that. Yeah, Jethro Bovingdon was my partner for a couple of years.
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot, where it's like you get into the business and you don't want to fall into the trap of like, Porsche, and then the cars are so good that eventually you do. But I will I ruthlessly attack my friends that buy Macans. I'm like, oh, nice overpriced Audi. I don't think Macans are all that great personally.
Yeah. No,
so I've never really been a fan of brands, and this upsets a lot of people in the industry. I like products.
Yeah.
So if Cadillac builds a good Cadillac, I love it. If Chevy builds a good Camaro, but if they build a bad Cadillac or if they build a bad car, I hate it. So I don't have any brand loyalty. No manufacturer's ever given me $1. So I have no need to say anything nice about any of them.
You're reviewing a Camaro at the moment, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I'm not even reviewing it. This was more, I haven't driven just a standard SS since whenever the car first came out. And I just said, hey, do you have a I've driven a lot of the track ones, the 1LE.
Yeah.
But I haven't touched a standard V8. And this one's an automatic. And it's just more of a familiarization.
I really like them. I'm not sure about the restyling to the front. I liked it when it came out. I'm not sure what they've. I think they jumped the gun too quickly on that. I think they should have just allowed the shape that they had, because it was a very aggressive, very angular shape, and I think that would have grown on people, because I love that. But this one just softened it a bit too much.
I think it's very poor. They tried to have a brand wide design language, which you don't need to do. And the original 6th gen was great looking. It was great looking.
Yeah.
The problem is, look, it wasn't selling as well as Mustang. So if it's not selling as well as Mustang, it's the car's fault, not the corporation's fault, not the fact that Mustang never went out of production. It's more of an icon. So there's something wrong with the car. It's expensive to engineer things. It's cheap to change the plastic front end. So that's what we're gonna do, and it's just bad. It's just a bad decision-making process.
I agree. I think that was a mistake. I think they should have stuck with it.
It was great looking.
I'm gonna move on from cars, and I'm gonna take you somewhere where I don't normally take my guests on these things. So this is rare, and we're gonna head into the arena of politics. Because normally logic says don't go into those areas. It can be fraught with dangers. But despite the fact that you're
a Jew and a Muslim talking politics,
I was gonna say despite the fact that you're a white guy on the other side of the Atlantic and I'm an Asian on this side, a Muslim, However, I do follow you. We are friends on social media, and I see a lot of stuff you post, and I share a lot of your views. I share a lot of the same frustrations and the passions that you express. Right now, I mean, we have to go into this, because right now we're seeing this incredible upheaval in America, and it's just absolutely. It's been from watching it from outside and actually being impacted by it as well. It's just been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that's a can of worms. I'll give you my quick little take on it. I'm Jewish, so I grew up as a very small minority in America. Jews we've done well in America, but I was always very well aware of being Jewish, and it's weird to be born into a country where you would hear things like, "Well, there'll never be a Jewish president," so you don't really feel like you belong 100%. You used to hear there'll never be a black president, and I'm sure women, when you hear there'll never be a woman president, they feel the same way. You never feel you're bought in 100%. Now, my father was Canadian. He's from Montreal, and he came to America and he loved America and he became an American citizen. But he always told me, that the way we treat blacks is shameful, and that he said it was crazy that in World War II, 2 million blacks fought, joined the army or whatever, the armed services, and fought, and they came back. And by the way, they were fighting global fascism and race-based fascism, and they came back and they were segregated. And and then he was always remind me that in 1948, when Truman wisely and smartly, and it was the only right thing to do, integrated the military, said the army is no longer segregated. The South not seceded, but they founded this party called the Dixiecrats. It was a states' right Democratic Party, but they were known as the Dixiecrats. And Strom Thurmond, who was a serving U.S. congressman from South Carolina, ran for president and won like 4 states. you know. And so he just said it was a shameful thing. So I was always very much aware of that. And then, you know, what's going on right now, I mean, it's first of all, I love the upheaval of the Black Lives Matter movement, like, what, you know, hundreds of years too late.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but is it though? Because it's been ongoing and ongoing. Like the other day, I mean, I became aware of what was happening in America in the early 90s through Malcolm X, through reading about him and watching the movie.
Sure.
And I rewatched that movie the other night, and I was like, wow, it's still as powerful and relevant today as it was when I first watched it in 92 or whatever it was, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's just, look, I mean, is every American a full citizen? And that's the question you got to answer. And if the answer is no, then you have to make everyone a full citizen. That's how I strongly feel about it. And I don't think you can ever you should never discriminate against people based on how they were born. No one can help that, or not help it. You're just born.
Yeah.
You can discriminate based on how you act. I have no problem with that. But I also think, and this is part of, you don't see this as much in the EU or the Middle East. Part of the problem we have is that a lot of Americans never go anywhere. And I'm going to paraphrase Mark Twain, but he said that, you know, travel makes you immune to prejudice. And even I see it in myself. I have prejudices. You know, I remember when I met you in Dubai, I was there, and I can't remember who it was. It could have been you. Somebody, though, they said, oh, if you like here, you should come to Saudi Arabia. You know, the car culture in Saudi Arabia is incredible. You know, we could drive through this road. And I looked at him, I said, Saudi Arabia, are you crazy? Like, I'm Jewish. Like, it's, you know, they'll cut my head off. And he looked at me, he's like, it could have been you, but you're like, nah. And I'll never forget this. He said, Saudi Arabia is just like Texas, except women can't drive cars.
Yeah. Oh, they can now.
Yeah, no, they can now. And that really struck me. And that really struck me. So the more I think you get out and you meet people, you realize that 99% of people are the same.
Yeah.
You know, they really are. They want to have a great life. They love their kids, and they want their kids to do well. That's how
I think you've summed it up perfectly there. I think the other thing is, like, the difference between, you know, you mentioned Europe, Middle East. Middle East is a different case, but Europe and America. In America, what we're seeing is an example of overt racism. It's very blatant. It's something that over here, growing up in London in the 70s, I will have experienced that. Since then, we've had something that's a bit more insidious. It's a bit more subtle, you know, and unfortunately that still exists. And even looking at our industries, let's boil it right down to our particular industry. How is it over there? Because, like, over here, I mean, there's me and there's Kevin Haggerty. I could probably count the number of Black and Asian journalists on one hand and then still have two fingers left. You know what I mean? How is it there? Really
bad. It's bad. You know, it's bad. The whole industry's bad. There's no Black executives. Well, Ralph Gilles, he's the one. There used to be Ed Welburn.
That's right. I've met him. Yes, nice guy. Yeah.
And I was talking with Ralph, and I don't think I was speaking out of school here, but we were trying to. Long story short, Art Center, where a lot of car designers go to school, they're trying to recruit Black design students. And so I got in touch with Ralph to see if he could help out. And he was saying there aren't any. There no Black teenagers in high school want to go into car design.
Yeah.
And then if you look at you know, what we do here, you see, you know, 2-3 Black writers. You see, you know, you're starting to see more women, which is fantastic.
Find that's wonderful, but I find that incredible because the market there is so big. And I remember you had quite a lot of diverse magazines. I mean, there's different cultures, so the Hispanic car culture and the Black car culture.
But
and
even there was that magazine Rides, which was like basically like a Black car culture magazine. I mean, it was, you know, I did some writing for them. There wasn't any Black writers. They're just
wow.
You know, there just aren't. And a friend of mine, I won't name the publication because I don't think he wants me to say, but a friend of mine is an editor-in-chief at a rival non-MotorTrend publication. And he was saying, in Detroit, you can't find Black writers. He did a talent search, and there are none. And it's the same thing. It's like, why aren't there more women in racing? Well, if you watch racing, if you're a woman and you look at all the race car drivers, there aren't any women.
Yeah.
So unless you feel like I'm going to go set out and do something new, you just internalize the fact that like that's not something people like me do. And I think the same holds true for blacks. You know, there's not a lot of Mexican car writers, you know.
So what can we do to change that? With a lot of the young people that watch this, a lot of young people that follow me happen to be Asians and Arabs, and they're like, well, I want to do this. And I'm like, well, you know, I have to be kind of discouraging a little bit. I mean, but because I can see that there isn't a lot of scope. There aren't opportunities.
I don't know. I wish I knew the answer, man. You know, like, I wish I knew the answer. I don't know. I think, I mean, if you figure that out, you can solve a lot of the world's problems. Right? But I just think maybe stop seeing people as the other. Maybe when you meet, you know, people of different races, have the thought that like, oh, maybe our children will fall in love one day and end all this nonsense because we're all humans, you know. But I don't know.
It's a tricky one. Like you say, it's one of those things. If we could figure that out, we'd figure out the world's problems, wouldn't we?
World peace. You know?
So, Johnny, as usual, I've gone well over my allotted 30 minutes, as I always try and do with these things. But I feel like I could talk to you forever, and we probably would. So, but maybe we can catch up another time and continue this conversation.
Anytime, man. I mean, as far as I know, I'll be at home. So.
So will I. But thank you so much once again for joining us. I wish you all the best, and keep doing what you do. We're loving it from this side of the Atlantic, and wonderful stuff.
Okay, cheers. I'll see you next time.
Take care, mate. Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Wow, that was an incredible conversation and really fascinating. I really enjoyed that because that went into all kinds of quite deep areas actually, and some philosophical questions that I suppose neither of us really have the answer to, but at least I guess we're asking the questions and thinking about those things. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any answers or suggestions. Put them in the comments above, below, elsewhere. Also let me know what you think of this series, this Brown Car Guy and Buddies series, and perhaps who else you'd like me to talk to or catch up with. That would be great. It's always great to get your feedback. Make sure that you're subscribing to this YouTube channel, youtube.com/Brown Car Guy, and hit that bell notification icon so that you don't miss any of these videos as I upload them. Also follow me on social media. Just search for #Brown Car Guy. That's on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, follow me or subscribe to browncarguy.com. Whilst you're at it, if you're enjoying these videos and if you can, then think about supporting me on patreon.com/Shazad Sheikh. And there you'll also find some cool content, which is just a little bit of fun. I hope you enjoy that. If you can't do that, then do please continue to just like, comment, share, subscribe. That is much appreciated and greatly valued. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in the next one.